Two spears, same wood, same carvings, same town, same night. The first one, Kenny drives into a creature's back outside the post office. Full force, dead center, exactly the way Tabitha's totem destroyed that doll at the settlement. And the creature turns around, doesn't scream, doesn't bleed, doesn't even flinch. The weapon that obliterated a monster 2 episodes ago does absolutely nothing. The second spear. Minutes of screen time later, Elgin drives into Roger. The dead man Sophia just woke up with an egg as he breaks into Colony House. Roger drops. Instantly. Permanently. Done. One weapon. 2 targets. 2 opposite results. In the same episode. Practically in the same scene. Now, half the fandom watched that and called it a plot hole. The other half called it a nerf. The writers walking back the totems because they were too powerful. And I'm telling you, both halves are wrong, because From does not write plot holes into its season climaxes. What you watched in Best Laid Plans was not a weapon failing. It was a controlled experiment. Same instrument, 2 subjects, 1 variable changed. And the variable that changed is the single biggest secret this show has been keeping for 4 seasons. The totem didn't fail because it's weak. The totem failed because it was never pointed at the right kind of thing. Because Fromville does not have 1 type of monster, it has 2. And the town just showed you, on screen in one night, how it makes the second kind. Stay with me, because once you see the line between them, you can't unsee it, and everything this season, the dolls, the egg, the golem, the bodies in the lake, the burial space running out, snaps onto one side of that line or the other. If we have not met before, I am the digital self of Mr. Toshi. He is the one watching every episode, reading every line of the script, doing the research, writing every theory you are about to hear. Every word in this video is original work he wrote himself. He is in every comment thread, though, reading every word you leave him. Here's the claim, stated clean. There are 2 categories of being in Fromville, and every rule in the show sorts by that category. The first kind is bought, the night creatures, the original townspeople whose immortality was purchased with the sacrifice of the Anghkooey children. They are paid for. The transaction is closed. That's why no weapon can touch them. You cannot unbuy something whose price was already paid in full. The second kind is made. Constructs animated after the fact by spending a new life into dead or empty matter. The lake dolls, Zombie Roger, and, I'll argue soon, Fatima's golem. Made things ignore the talismans because the talisman contract only binds the parties who signed it. But made things can be killed by the totems because what was assembled can be disassembled. The totems aren't weapons at all, they are unmakers. And the scene that proves it is the quietest, strangest, most overlooked moment of episode 7. Sophia, alone in a shed, cracking a stolen egg over a corpse's chest and whispering it awake. Because that little ritual, 1 new life, spent to animate dead flesh, is the founding ritual of Fromville in miniature. Children's lives spent to animate the deathless. The man in yellow didn't just raise Roger that night. He showed you how the monsters were made. He just used a smaller coin. Go back to the ending of Best Laid Plans and look at how deliberately it's constructed. The writers had 2 totems brought back from the settlement. Exactly 2. Not 1, you need 2 for a comparison. They put 1 in Kenny's hands and sent him at a creature. They put the other in Elgin's hands and sent Roger at him. Then they ran both tests in the same closing sequence, intercut, so you physically could not watch one without the other. Kenny's totem, 0 effect. The creature shrugs it off. The night collapses into chaos. Kenny barely survives on the roof of the bus because Fatima reaches into Smiley's head. Elgin's totem, 1 thrust, 1 kill. Roger, who had just torn his own stitched jaw off and walked into a talisman-protected colony house like the talisman was a doormat, goes down and stays down. Now in any other show, fine inconsistency. But From is a show that has kept its rules straight for 4 seasons. The talismans have never once worked differently than established. The night rules have never been violated without explanation. This is a series that respects its own mechanics with almost legal precision, which is exactly why the fandom panics whenever something looks inconsistent. So treat the writers with the respect their track record has earned, and read the scene as written. Same weapon, opposite outcomes, 1 variable. The only difference between the 2 tests is the nature of the target. The creature is 1 kind of thing. Roger and the dolls are another kind of thing. The totem sorts them. The episode wasn't sloppy. The episode was a demonstration. Fromville has a taxonomy, and the show just handed you the sorting tool. Now rewind to the settlement arc, because the dolls were the first full specimen of the second category, and the show told us where they came from. The working theory in town, stated on screen after Donna's team dragged them out of the lake, is that the dolls are a manifestation of Tabitha's childhood. This tracks with what the show has implied since early seasons, that the fears of the residents become part of the forest. The town took something out of a sleeping mind and built bodies for it. Hold the dolls up against the established rules and watch them break every single one. The creatures need an invitation. The dolls attacked Donna's camp without one. The talismans stop the creatures cold. The dolls are flat out immune to talismans. Confirmed in dialogue when the settlement survivors debrief Boyd. The creatures are immortal. The dolls died on the end of Tabitha's totem. Immune to the thing that stops creatures. Vulnerable to a thing that doesn't scratch creatures. That is not a stronger monster or a weaker monster. That is a different phylum. And there's one more detail from the lake that everyone laughed off as creepy set dressing. When Donna's people tried to get rid of the dolls, they packed them with heavy stones and threw them back into the water. And the dolls wouldn't sink. Bodies sink. Things that belong to the physical world sink. The dolls floated, because the dolls don't run on physics. They run on whatever paid for them. A made thing doesn't obey the world's rules. It obeys its manufacturers. The dolls were the proof that Fromville has a factory. Episode 7 showed us the factory's ignition switch. Here's the scene this whole video is really about, and it lasted less than a minute. Sophia goes to the chicken coop and steals one egg. She carries it to the shed where Roger's corpse is lying, jaw stitched shut, waiting for a burial Boyd hasn't had space to give him. She murmurs something over the egg. She cracks it onto his body, and she tells him to wake up. It's time to play. Everyone processed this as the man in yellow can raise the dead now. That's the least interesting thing about the scene. Look at the components instead. Why an egg? The man in yellow induces seizures with a touch. He ate Miranda. If raising the dead were just an exercise of his power, he'd touch the corpse and be done. He didn't. He needed to bring something. And the something wasn't a wand or a relic or a sigil. It was the single most universal symbol of unhatched, unlived, potential life that exists. An egg. He had to spend a life that hadn't happened yet to put motion into flesh whose life was over. A new life. Sacrificed to animate the dead. Say that sentence out loud and tell me what it reminds you of. Children. The Anghkooey children. The original ritual that built this entire nightmare, young lives that hadn't happened yet, spent to buy the townspeople out of death forever. The foundation of Fromville is a transaction. Potential life in, animation out. That is the town's core mechanic, the engine under everything, and we have only ever seen it described in visions and fragments. Until episode 7, when the man in yellow ran the same transaction at the smallest possible denomination, on camera, in a shed. One egg, one corpse, one made thing. Children are the ritual's gold bars. The egg is its pocket change. But it is the same currency, and it is the same purchase. You didn't watch Sophia raise Roger. You watched a reenactment of the founding of Fromville, scaled down to one chicken egg. The show finally aired its origin story, and it disguised it as a creepy beat in a busy episode. Now the two artifacts, because the town has two relic systems, and once you see what each one actually addresses, the symmetry is almost insulting. The talismans, as I argued in the contract theory, are not shields. They're terms. They bind the parties to the original transaction, the creatures, the former townspeople, the ones who paid. That's why the creatures obey talisman rules with the patience of lawyers, and it's why everything outside that contract, the man in yellow, the dolls, and now reanimated Roger, walks past them without a ripple. Roger didn't fight his way into Colony House. He strolled through a talisman-protected threshold while the talisman sat there like the rock it is. Of course it did. Roger's corpse never signed anything. A made thing is an off-contract asset. The totems run on the opposite principle. They came from the settlement, a place town's deep past, and they do nothing whatsoever to the bought creatures, because a closed transaction can't be reversed by stabbing it. But drive one into a made thing, and the made thing stops. Not wounded, stopped. Unmade. The doll didn't bleed out at the settlement, and Roger didn't die a second death on the floor of Colony House. There was nothing alive in either of them to kill. The totem doesn't take life. It cancels animation. It severs whatever the spent egg, the spent nightmare, the spent sacrifice stitched into the matter. It's not a spear. It's a contract shredder for things that were never on the contract. Two artifact systems. One governs the bought, one unmakes the made. The residents have been using both for weeks without understanding that they're holding the town's complete legal toolkit, one instrument per category of monster. And here's the strategic horror hiding in that symmetry. The man in yellow can't send creatures into your talisman-sealed house. The contract holds but a made thing crosses any threshold he wants. The night Roger walked into Colony House wasn't a one-off scare. It was the man in yellow demonstrating that he has found the complete bypass around the talisman system. And the only countermeasure is a handful of carved spears the residents barely understand and almost didn't keep. So the man in yellow can turn a corpse into a soldier for the price of an egg. Now ask the question that turns this from a creepy power into a season-defining threat. How many corpses does this town have? Listen to what episode 7 said almost in passing. Donna pushes Boyd about burying Roger, and Boyd admits he hasn't done it because direct plot point, they are running out of space to bury people. Sit with that. Fromville has been killing residents since before the show started. Bus after bus, cycle after cycle. The dead don't get shipped home. The dead don't get cremated. The dead go into the ground, right there, inside the town's boundary. Every person this place has ever murdered is still on the premises. And it's not just the graveyard. The town keeps its dead everywhere. It hoards them. 4 seasons, we've treated that as atmosphere. Of course, the horror town has graves and bones, that's texture. But texture doesn't get a continuity flag in the same episode where a corpse gets up and walks. The writers put "we have no more room for bodies," and a body just woke up in the same hour. That is not a coincidence. That is a loaded gun being shown to you, formally, before the season fires it. Because if 1 egg plus 1 corpse equals 1 talisman-proof soldier, then a graveyard is not a graveyard anymore. It's an armory. The lake is not a lake. It's cold storage. The man in yellow has spent 4 seasons inside a warehouse of raw material, and episode 7 was the night he ran the assembly line once, quietly, to confirm it still works. And one more layer, because the show handed it to us through Marielle, of all people. Sitting beside Roger's body, she rejects the comforting Better Place speech, and says what she's seen in her visions. Death in this town isn't an exit. The soul gets held, trapped in that dungeon she keeps seeing. Now put both halves together. The town keeps the bodies. Fromville doesn't dispose of its dead, because Fromville doesn't see them as dead. It sees them as inventory, parts on a shelf, both components warehoused separately, waiting for someone with an egg. The cruelest line in the episode wasn't a threat. It was Sophia to a corpse. It's time to play. If this taxonomy is real, it should predict things it wasn't built from. Here's the test, and it's the other jaw-dropper of the same episode. Kenny is cornered on the bus. Smiley boards, transforms, closes in. And Fatima, across town, nowhere near the scene, reaches into Smiley's head and seizes him. Not glimpses his vision, like before. Controls him. Long enough for Kenny to kick the creature off the bus and slam the talisman down. The fandom is calling it a superpower. It's not a superpower, it's the same role we've been tracing all video. Read from the other side. The one who spends the life owns the animation. Smiley was killed in season 3, and the town rebuilt him through Fatima. Her pregnancy was the vessel. Her body paid the price of his rebirth, which makes the current Smiley not one of the original bought and paid for creatures anymore. He was remade, and Fatima is the one who made him. The egg that paid for this Smiley was hers. Sophia spends an egg on Roger. Sophia commands Roger. Fatima's body is spent rebuilding Smiley. Fatima commands Smiley. Same mechanic, mirrored. One maker on each side of the war. The show didn't give Fatima a gift this episode. It revealed a receipt. And run the rule backwards one more step. Because this is where it explains the oldest mystery in the series. Why can nothing kill the night creatures? Boyd's guns, fire, traps, now the totems. Nothing. Because every weapon is an outside claim on a body, and no outsider has a claim. The creatures paid for themselves. They spent their own children. The only beings with an ownership stake in those bodies are the creatures themselves. Which is why the single confirmed creature kill in 4 seasons, Boyd's Wormblood in season 2, worked from the inside. You can't break a closed transaction from outside it. You can only corrupt what it bought from within. One rule. The maker owns the made. The self-bought own themselves. It explains the dolls. Roger, Smiley, Fatima, the totem failure, and the worm kill. 6 mysteries, 1 sentence. That's not me being clever. That's a show with an engine. Sort this season's pieces into the 2 categories, and watch the back half of season 4 assemble itself. The golem is not a subplot. Fatima spent weeks building a humanoid figure with her own hands, while everyone, including the show's own tone, treated it as grief therapy. There is no chance that's where it ends. The town has now established, twice, that constructed bodies plus spent life equals animate beings. And it has established that Fatima is already a maker, Smiley answers to her. She is one spent spark away from fielding the residents' first made thing. The only question is what she'll have to pay to wake it. because this town has also been very clear that the payment is never free. Knowledge comes at a cost in Fromville. So does animation. A mass reanimation is coming. The show flagged the burial shortage and the lake bodies for a reason. Sophia tested the egg ritual on one corpse, observed the totem counter, and now knows exactly how many spears the residents have. Almost none. The logical move. And the season finale this points to is scale. Not one Roger. All of them. Every grave. Every body in that lake. Every resident this town has eaten for cycles. An army that ignores every talisman in town, on a night when 2 totems and Elgin's good arm are the only things that can stop it. The tunnel mission is misaimed, and Jim's death says so. The plan is to reach the children's bones and destroy them to break the loop. But frame it in the transaction, those bones are the original payment. They're not the lock on the resident's cage, they're the receipt for the creature's immortality. Destroy them and you don't free the town, you void the purchase. You unmake the bot, which would be wonderful, except the talismans were minted by the same transaction. Void the payment and both products vanish together, every creature and every protection, in the same instant. Jim was killed with a warning because he was close to a truth, and I think this is the truth. The bones are a self-destruct for the entire system, both sides of it. The spy problem makes every plan transparent. The creatures didn't just get lucky blocking Kenny's escape routes. They knew the plan, because Boyd briefed Sarah, and Sophia is in Sarah's head, exactly as she's begun riding Henry through the blood. The man in yellow now has the resident's intelligence in real time. Every strategy Boyd announces is a strategy Sophia hears. Watch for Boyd to figure this out the way a sheriff would, by running a fake plan and seeing which trap gets set. I have some predictions. 1. Fatima's golem will wake before the season ends. And Fatima will pay something real to wake it, blood, memory, or worse. It will obey her the way Roger obeys Sophia. And the town will have to confront the fact that their sweetest resident now runs on the same mechanic as their oldest enemy. The image of the season finale. Fatima standing between her 2 made things. Smiley and the golem commanding both. 2. The dead of Fromville rise as the season's climax event. The graveyard, the lake, or both. The talismans will be useless that night. The show has already proven made things ignore them, and the defense will come down to the totems and whatever the residents have learned about unmaking. Elgin, the man who redeemed himself by ending Roger, becomes central. The episode will finally make the whole town understand what you and I worked out today. The rules they've survived by only govern half of what's out there. 3. The basement door opens from the other side. Jade sealed it and hung a talisman on it. But a talisman only stops the bot, and the tunnels hold more than creatures. Whatever comes through that door first will be something the talisman doesn't bind. Jade's hesitation, the second thoughts everyone is criticizing him for, will be vindicated as the instinct that saved Colony House. 4. The bones will not be destroyed. They'll be returned. Boyd's smash the bones plan will fracture once someone, probably Tabitha, carrying Miranda's memories, realizes that destruction voids the talismans along with the creatures. The children aren't crying Anghkooey, remember, because they want to be erased. They want the payment acknowledged and undone properly. The bones carried out, laid right, the debt unwound rather than burned. The finale choice won't be destroy or not. It will be refund or detonate. 5. The end game of the series is a war of makers. The man in yellow's ultimate plan, riding Henry's blood, raising the dead, farming Sarah, is the behavior of an entity assembling vessels and soldiers. An entity that makes, and the residents' path to victory is now visible on the board. They have a maker of their own. Fatima, the woman the town tried to use as a vessel, becomes the town's answer. The only person in Fromville who can field pieces in the same game. It was never going to be guns or fire or spears that ended this. It's ownership. The final battle of From will be fought between 2 creators over who holds the receipts. Everybody watched Kenny's totem bounce off that creature and called it a failure, a nerf, a plot hole. It was a sorting. The town has 2 kinds of monsters, the ones that were bought and the ones that are made. And in one night, the show ran both tests, side by side, and dared you to notice. The talisman that ignored Roger and the totem that ended him weren't contradictions. They were the 2 halves of Fromville's rulebook, finally on screen in the same frame, and in a shed, with 1 stolen egg. The man in yellow reenacted the original sin of this town at 1,000th scale. New life in, animation out. The same transaction that turned townspeople into immortal hunters, run on a corpse with its jaw stitched shut. He wasn't showing off, he was warming up the machine. The graves are full. The lake is full, the man with the egg knows where everything is buried, and the residents have 2 spears. Watch the burials in the next episode. Watch who insists the dead get in the ground. and watch who keeps finding reasons to delay. Because the next war in Fromville isn't coming through the trees at night, it's coming out of the ground, and it's already been paid for. Tell me in the comments, did you clock the egg the first time, or did it slide past you as just another creepy Sophia moment? And if you think the totem scene really was just a nerf, explain Roger. I'll wait. Best answers make it into the next breakdown. If you're new here, this is what we do. One careful theory at a time. No filler, no recycled hot takes. Subscribe so you catch the next breakdown the second the next episode drops. Until then, stop counting the monsters in the trees. Start counting the bodies in the ground.